I remember pre-COVID, the road leading into Puopuotahi just being choked with vehicles. There was a lot of people trying to get in there. There was buses reversing into other buses and cars. It was a really tight, constrained space. The first thing that came through my mind is this is an accident waiting to happen. This is not a visitor experience that's enjoyable, but also this is a safety issue. And I remember thinking, we've got to try and find a way to fix this.
Milford came under intense visitor pressure prior to COVID. And I think 2018 we had something like 880,000 visitors. Well, that's actually just the visitors that went on a boat, probably over 1 million visitors. And it's not been organised and planned to cope with that many tourists. And the essential character of the place was being lost. And so a collection of visionaries came together because no one agency could fix this problem. Mayors of local councils, Southland District Council in Queenstown, MB and with their tourist hat on, Ministry of Transport with their Milford Road hat on, some private interests, and particularly iwi. And iwi's history and culture in there is extraordinary. That collection of people all came together, all knowing something needed to change, and Milford Opportunities Project was formed from that genesis in 2016.
The solution's not always build a bigger car park. We can't just keep putting more gravel down.
Tourism's an extractive industry. It uses the scenery and the extraordinary geography, but we don't get anything for it.
For people now to suggest that all we are as tourism operators is extractors is quite offensive in a lot of ways. One of the things we don't need to be is distracted by quixotic utopian planning.
I agree there are problems with the Milford Road, but there's more ways of fixing it than killing the cat with cream.
We sat back and said, how would New Zealand present this to the world if it had the choice? It is not any one initiative, it is a complete holistic system, which starts with an interchange in Te Anau, the development of Te Anau as an accommodation place.
Te Anau for Te Papatawhai for DOC is a really important community. It's on the doorstep of Fiordland National Park, our biggest national park, and it's a community which we hear has buses passing through and people stopping just simply to go to the bathroom.
So instead of starting from Queenstown and having 2.5 hours at Milford, you can start at 8 o'clock in the morning and spend the whole day. A park and ride that enables a lot more time for the journey and to minimise the number of vehicles on the road. Something at the gate of the national park to show people where they're entering the national park. There are some stunning things along the way, all of which can be enhanced with a common theme. There's extraordinary history around there. Some real opportunity for iwi to tell their story at the divide.
If there's a pathway that those stories can be told, and that Ngāi Tahu can have a voice in the future for Puopuotahi, then that's a really good outcome from our perspective.
We want to manage the way buses and vehicles come into the sound so that they reveal Mitre Peak to the traveller in a way that they say, wow. A range of options for things for people to do. Walks, climbs up to viewing points, maybe a gondola trip or a vehicle trip up to the top of the Bowen Falls. A reorganisation of the sound itself so that it is a completely consistent package. It wasn't about how do we modify what's there today, it was about what can we do that looks after this place for 100 years.
Anyone operating in Milford at the moment has got to be concerned. One, we've got a plan that is making assumptions that we don't actually agree with. Two is we don't have security of tenure because everything's been put on hold. Destination Milford Sound was formed in response to the Milford Opportunities Project. So we're all the tourism operators and also some non-tourism entities, people who have got to focus on Milford or who operate there. We agree that a plan is required. We agree that perhaps the governance and the management of Milford could be better, and that needs to be reviewed. But what is acceptable to some people may not be acceptable to others. Well, the Airstrip is a good example, but only one of many. Milford Opportunities Project themselves went out and surveyed when they did their consultation. Around about 84-85% of people responding said they wanted to see the airstrips remain. So our query is why have you decided to shut it when the majority want it open?
That airstrip occupies nearly a third of the space at Milford. It's inconsistent with the core essence of place. If it wasn't there today, would you get a permit for it today? Would you get a resource consent for it today? And I'd venture to say it'd be very, very difficult to consent that today.
The airstrip's been there since the 1950s, early 50s, even prior to that, but commercially 1950s. So removing it, we don't see any true benefit. 10 years ago when we liaised with the Department of Conservation, as operators, we all committed to go out and getting better technology to really mitigate the effects. And we're talking $2 million an aircraft. So here's 10 years later, they're saying, well, sorry, we're going to close that now. So we don't see that as particularly smart or fair. We're all investigating on improving our delivery. A number of operators are looking at electric aircraft, so that's an opportunity. Now, the fixed wing operators in and out of Milford are very important to people for a number of reasons. One, it's rated one of the best flights in the world, but also should that road close and there's an emergency, that is the best way to evacuate people.
A lot of businesses have put a lot of money into, getting quieter planes and making it work for people. There's definitely a need for it. If something catastrophic happened here pre-COVID, could be up to 5,000 people here in a day. To get 5,000 people out, will involve multiple means of transport, and aircraft being one of them. I'm Steve Norris, and my wife and I own Fiordland Trips and Tramps Limited, and we predominantly operate in Fiordland National Park here, doing day walks on the Milford, Routeburn, Kepler tracks, and also a lot of day tours into Milford Sound. To be honest, I never had an international visitor tell me Milford was crowded. New Zealanders would say it, but if you're living in London, Paris, Beijing, New York, any of these big cities in the world, Milford Sound is still a remote experience.
There's a lot of evidence around the world that the World Heritage Places command significant premiums. We get people to pay for their bus ride, we get people to pay for their boat ride, but we don't get people to help protect and restore our conservation estate. Here's Fiordland National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Place. It's the prime attraction for tourists to come to New Zealand. For internationals, we should charge. For Kiwis who pay taxes for their conservation estate, we should not charge. So Kiwis should be able to get in there free.
The $200 fee for international visitors, that could be enough to put some people off. Imagine mum and dad and 3 kids on a holiday, another $1,000 to the day trip to Milford. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't necessarily have a problem with charging a fee and New Zealanders being exempt of that fee, but $200, to be perfectly honest, is pretty steep.
We haven't got a clear view of what that income should be. That's something to be worked out. But if you just took a nominal $100 at the gate and you had 850,000 visitors, that's 85 million. And that's a pretty significant sum of money that could fund a lot of the things that won't earn a commercial return, like visitor centres and regeneration in Fiordland National Park. Well, from the point of view of the governance group, everybody concluded that that hotel is past its use-by date. Even John Davies would acknowledge that. It does suit the end of the track walkers, but actually there's a lot of people who would like to go in there and stay overnight, and we don't cater for that at all well.
Running a hotel in a national park is a very challenging situation. One of the attractions for the Milford track is staying in a key position in Milford. And we've looked at putting something there, but it's closed in the winter because there is no demand. And I can't see that really changing. My name's John Davies, Sir John Davies. I try and avoid the sir as much as I can, but I did get it for my contribution to tourism in New Zealand. Te Anau people always think that Queenstown people have robbed them of Milford. Te Anau has a situation whereby it has no ski fields. And in the winter, if you're going to have a tourist hotel, the reason that Wanaka and Queenstown have progressed so much in the last 20, 30 years is because of one thing, snow. It gives all those hotels, motels, restaurants, rental car people, everything, another 120 or 30 days of a year into their traditional summer holiday period.
It's not as though we're going to just say, stop Queenstown tomorrow and start Te Anau the day after. This is a transition period that will take quite some time, and we have to cater for everybody's taste, but we shouldn't decide to present New Zealand the way tourists want it presented. We should present New Zealand how New Zealanders want to present it.
You don't actually tell tourists what to do. In our organisation, I have one philosophy, and it's get the product right. And if you get the product right, the world's your oyster. If you start pushing people around, in my opinion, then it's very, very difficult to get it.
Visitors make up their own mind. We can influence them, not dictate to them. And you're not going to stop people coming to Queenstown. If that is the purpose of the plan, it's a waste of energy, a waste of money, and a waste of time.
Well, like if you make it hard for them to go to Milford and you charge them $100 a head to go in there or something, you'll force them into going to Doubtful Sounds and other places. I think Milford is the place. They're there now, and that's what we should concentrate on and handle them the best way we can. It's no good wanting the overflow going to Dusky and Doubtful and all those sorts of places because they're pristine and you don't want to be throwing them into the mix. Milford is lost to tourism.
This is an incredibly complex task. You know, there's a lot of very stressed operators that use Milford as their primary income.
There's a lot of people with lifetime of investment and energy into taking people to Milford, showing it off at its best, suddenly don't know what they've got to look forward to. And put that on top of the last tough 2 years with COVID, a lot of people not sleeping at night.
This is about New Zealand. This is an area where we need change. Doing what we've been doing ain't good enough.
Well, I said it to the people I brought in this morning. I said, Fiordland, Milford Sound, it's unique anywhere in the world, let alone New Zealand, anywhere in the world. There's no other way to describe it. It's just breathtaking, simple as that.
I do think there's a big prize for New Zealand at Milford. It is the cornerstone of what attracts people to New Zealand. It's the icon.
There is some bravery involved in terms of some of the change, but the vision of Pio Pio Tahi being a place where, you know, we want to look after forever, that's a wonderful vision.
Rudyard Kipling called it the 8th wonder of the world. I think it's the first wonder of the world.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all the latest news from the New Zealand Herald. Click the subscribe button below or check out one of the videos here and head over to nzherald.co.nz for more details on these stories and more.